Cian Corla. It's on the same topic. Minister, I don't know if you just take everybody for a fool. Like, you really expect people to believe that you bring in amendments to designate LNG terminals a strategic infrastructure which then get to bypass the normal planning process, and you expect people to believe that that's a technical thing. In the context when your coalition partners, many of them are on the record repeatedly and forcefully advocating for LNG terminals. I mean, get real here. Either you are incredibly naive, which I don't believe you're that naive, or you're playing a game here. There's a massive push to get fossil fuel infrastructure, LNG terminals developed. You're amending the legislation to make it easier for that to happen.
Minister Ryan, please.
There's no game here. There's no taking anyone for a fool. And not only am I not naive, I think I have a long record going back 30 years of absolute commitment for climate action in our country, particularly action in the area of keeping fossil fuels in the ground, going right back. That for decades we've campaigned and worked in that area. And nothing's changed in that regard. And government position hasn't changed. You've heard no one from the government side say that we're going back on that energy security strategy statement, which said we would not have a commercial facility. Very clear. Probably what's clouded this in some ways, not only the amendment, which was purely technical in nature, but also we had a court decision. We have to be careful we don't comment on court decisions. But some may have drawn an inference from that, there's a change and government policy is now undermined. I don't believe the court decision had anything really in relation to government policy. It was addressing more technical issues in terms of how Bord Pleanála go about their processes. But the actual government position has stayed the exact same. And that's we're not doing commercial facilities. And that's rock solid, 100% certain, clear today, as about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 6 months ago, a year ago. So there's no one, that certainty, I hope, puts you at rest, gets over the concern you have. And we do have security issues we have to look at, and we've always up front and said that and printed the policy and published it and agreed it in this House and discussed it in some detail, that there is an issue if Russia or other actor was to be able to take out a gas pipeline, which has happened to other European countries. How do we manage that? And what I've done is gone about in a proper scientific engineering analysis way, look to see how we do manage that. One option would be to go with the facility, the likes of the FRSU, temporary, state-led, as Deputy Rourke just set out all the conditions, not breaching our climate laws. And I've just asked, because there is further analysis, and it'd be frustrating, this can take time, but I think further analysis is warranted to say, could we do it in a different, another way? And that's what I'm working on.
Thank you. Deputy Murphy.
I'm sorry, Minister, that does not assuage any of my concerns. I quote Oisin Coughlin, Friends of the Earth, who would not be the wing of the environmental movement which is the most critical of the Green Party. Sometimes they have, spoke positively about your record in government. But I quote Oisin Coughlin: "You don't legally designate something you oppose or aren't sure we need as strategic. The contradiction is so absurd it feels like the government is gaslighting us." And he goes on to say that if this is the last thing the government does, facilitating LNG import terminal, getting approval, then the legacy of the Green, the government, will be in tatters. That's the truth. That's the reality. And the arguments you make around it do not give me any confidence. Because, for example, you said in response to the earlier question that yes, you could find a way of importing non-fracked gas, ensuring we don't have fracked gas. But what you keep citing the policy statement of the government, and the policy statement of the government is very, very clear that there's no legal way of doing that within the current EU laws. It says that, sets that out. So you might outline how this is going to be done without the EU laws being changed.
Minister, please.
November last year, which is our energy security paper, looking at a whole range of different risks in energy security. And that's the place where we say that the only facility we could or would introduce would be one which would be purely temporary, purely strategic, purely security orientated. And in those circumstances where it's state-led, I believe you could set conditions in terms of the amount of security you provided, not having frack gas and so on. I'm absolutely confident that is deliverable and doable. With regards to Friends of the Earth, and they're, in my mind, misreading what that amendment was about, because it is complex and technical and goes back many, many months in a very complicated bill. you had a potential risk with onshore facilities and offshore facilities being under different planning regimes and having to make sure that it was a standardised approach. Strategic infrastructure provision is a very common provision. There are a number of wind farms have to go through that. It's not just fossil or other infrastructure. It doesn't mean you avoid planning. You still have to go through on board Panola.
Thank you,
it was just
Minister.
to make sure that there wasn't inconsistencies in our planning system that amendment was made.
Thank you, Minister.
But the fundamental question is, do we want such a commercial facility? And clearly the government is saying no.
Deputy Murphy.
The Minister said there that you could ensure that frack gas is not used in this so-called state-led LNG terminal. But the policy statement of the government in May 2021 is clear. It is not possible for Ireland, under the European treaties or EU directive concerning common rules for the internal market and natural gas, to legislate for a ban on the import of frack gas, to ban the import into Ireland of frack gas, to prevent the processing of frack gas in the state. So you might enlighten us as to how this is going to happen. The truth is that importing LNG is worse for the environment than burning coal. Oisin Coughlin made the point we may as well leave Money Point open, burning coal, as to build a new LNG terminal. You might also shed light. You rely a lot on this term state-led. What does it mean? Again, under EU laws, it's not possible for a state to exclusively own or operate a fossil fuel terminal. So what does the term state-led actually mean? It's designed to give the impression that in some way this is publicly owned and controlled, but that isn't the reality if it happens.
Minister Ryan, please.
With LNG having potentially the same emissions as coal, we will not be increasing our importation of extra LNG gas. That's agreed. We're not going to breach our climate change targets in any of this. That's an absolute certain given, and I believe in any court, or in any debate, or in any government, future government or this government, that will hold firm. And in terms of a state-commissioned facility, I believe we would be within our legal rights to say we have to have certain, we would like a facility which gives this amount of security, operates within certain conditions, and yes, we would like it not to use frack gas. I think that could be in the commissioning of a project. I see no reason why, I see very unlikely, I don't see the prospect that would be legally challenged, because we would be commissioning, looking for a facility to have certain characteristics. And it's just commissioning by the state. And so yes, I believe it can be done without any frack gas, but I think the key question here is, first of all, what type of facility? And can we, in the further analysis that I've asked the department to do, look to see where we may not need a facility. Now, that would require jumping. There are loads of different elements. Further interconnection, better storage, using the new anaerobic digestion gas source, using backup between power stations and our strategic oil reserves. There are a number of ways in which we can provide security. That's the key thing we need to look at.
Question 50, Deputy Darren.